The following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Hello, I'm Carl Seidel, host of The People's View, sponsored by the Nashua City Republican Committee. And if you want, we meet at the Crown Plaza the second Thursday of every month. And if you want to find out more information, you can go to our website at nashuagop.org.
Welcome to The People's View.
Hello, and help me welcome Steve Negron, who's just new to the running for representative.
Hello, Carl. How are you doing, sir?
Okay, doing all right. And you're in Ward 5, right?
Yes, sir. Correct. Ward 5.
And why did you decide to run?
Well, it's interesting. We actually were fortunate enough when we hosted Senator Ayotte at the House. She was getting ready right after she put down that she was running for re-election. And there was some other state GOP members that were there, and they talked to me about an opening that was there in Ward 5 and would I consider running. And I thought about it. My daughter's a senior this year at Bishop Girton, and this was her last year, so I'm very involved with her volleyball, and I said, if it's going to impact my daughter, I can't do that. So they said, okay, we appreciate that. We want to take you out to lunch and talked about it anyway. So we went out, and the timing was right, and so I went and I talked to my daughter, Katie, and I said, this is what we're thinking about doing. And she goes, you know, Dad, I hear you complain a lot, but if you don't do something about it and get involved, you really don't have a right to complain.
Wow.
And this is coming from a 17-year-old. So I said, okay, I talked it over with my wife, Terry, and they were behind me, my two sons, Stephen and Jamie.
Good.
They said, Pop, we're behind you, so here I am.
Good, good.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you got the whole family behind
Absolutely,
you, huh?
yeah. They're signed waivers, you know, and as a matter of fact, Katie was my deputy communications director.
Oh, how about?
So, and my sons know tweeting and Instagram and all that kind of stuff, so I lean on them heavily to help me understand that whole world of technology that I'm still pretty much a babe in the woods in.
Wow. Well, I encourage you to get your daughter involved. I got involved with one of my daughters very early on when we lived in Massachusetts, and she wound up being a deputy assistant attorney general for the down in Washington. Yeah,
that's outstanding. Yeah, and I think as a parent, and you know it well, as long as you're involved with your kids, you know that's what's important, right? And make them a part of the journey, both ways. Theirs is part of yours, and you as part of theirs.
They understand some of your political rants.
That's true. That's so true.
But mine helped me with some of my speech writing and stuff like that.
Neat, yeah.
But what do you think I guess what's your best irritation up there?
Well, one of the things that really bothers me is the New Hampshire voter registration laws.
Oh, yeah.
And having been a military guy, and my dad was in the military for 33 years in the Air Force, and I'm a retired Air Force officer, as is my wife. And her father was in the Marine Corps and the Army, and my sister was in the Air Force. So we're a military family. And we always knew that it was something that we held in high regard to be able to vote. So we always normally did this absentee ballot. And I remember my father bringing the family together when we were overseas, and he's saying, okay, you know, this is what we're doing. He was very open with us about what he was doing. And then when I started hearing more about the voter registration here in New Hampshire, it came to light to me that, you know, that's one of the most, I think, sacred responsibilities we have as U.S. citizens is the right to vote. And if you look across other countries, that isn't necessarily the way that it was. And so when I started digging into it, that our state has the possibility that somebody could actually cast a vote and not be a person of the state of New Hampshire. And,
or even a citizen.
Or even a citizen. And I said, that's fundamentally wrong.
That's
you know. And last year, there was some legislation that went up to the corner office with Governor Hassan, and she vetoed it. They were looking for a 20-day residency requirement.
Right.
And she vetoed it, saying that it was unconstitutional. And to me, casting a vote when you're not a person of the state is more unconstitutional than having you try to get a residency requirement. So I think that's the one thing, and I know that people have tried. I'm pretty tenacious. So this is something that I believe when you lay it all out and you put it into very simple C-spot run kind of vernacular, people will say, you know, that isn't right. You know, it's harder to get a driver's license it is than to vote in the state of New Hampshire. So I think that's one of the things that I would like to take on. And I know a lot of my other colleagues.
There'll be people there who'll help you.
Absolutely, absolutely. absolutely. And so we had, and it came to light for me. We were helping the Scott Brown campaign a couple of years back, and I was actually privy to some things out in the western part of the state where you saw a lot of people come across, busloads of people that were coming across and voting, and it's just not right. You know, it's a sanctity of the vote that we need to make sure that we uphold, and that's probably my biggest thing that I'd like to take up to Concord.
Yeah, and we had a lot of people come in at the, registering at the voting day.
Right.
And that really increased in 2012.
Right.
Over 7,000 in Nashua alone.
Same day registration?
Same day registration. And 700 in my ward, Ward 1. And I think your ward had a lot too.
We did. We did.
So, but anyway, that's interesting. Have you any other things that you're going to look at?
I do. The other thing too is being a veteran, as I talked about, coming back from a very heavy military background. I think we need to we're doing some great things. I think we need to do more to be able to provide some support for our veterans. When you look at some of these voucher programs that was co-sponsored by both Senator Shaheen and Senator Ayotte about being able to fund some things so that a veteran in our state can go to any healthcare facility to do that. So, it's really funny, as a young recruit, when they go in, there's an understanding or a belief, even more importantly, that, I'm going willingly, right, because it's an all-volunteer force, to go off and do some things and put myself in harm's way. There should be an understanding that when they return back to the state from which they left, that we're going to take care of them. So I would look at being able to see, is there any kind of ways that we can maybe in the long term build a large VA facility, large permanent hospital in our state. You hear all these horror stories about people having to go to facilities and not get treated. I just think it's a shame that we ask these young men and women to go do some things, uproot them. Take them, a lot of them are married with young kids, so they leave behind, their wife and their kids, and they come back, and for us not to be able to receive them with open arms and to be thankful, but to take care of them, because they did some things that they wanted to do, and I think it's our responsibility as a state to help them when they come back.
Last time I talked to Kelly Ayotte, she had the same feeling that they have to do something and at least get this voucher program available in the meantime. Because I think the Veterans Affairs Department has to really be
revamped.
Revamped is, I guess, the word I was looking for. The right word,
absolutely.
Because it might be that you do away with it and handle it differently. But whatever, it has to be. It has to change.
It has to change. And as a matter, early on in the Republican in the race, Dr. Ben Carson talked about maybe doing away with the VA as an entity and rolling it underneath the Department of Defense.
Right.
Because the Department of Defense probably knows better what's going on. And anytime you get an organization that grows so big,
That's right.
I don't care how good you are at the top, it's very hard to execute when you have so many layers to go through, because by the time it gets down to the pointy end of the spear, it's filtered. So I think we have to do some things better and reduce some of that overhead.
That might be a good solution, because they're run a little bit better than most of the departments. But you'll find that we have a problem too here in the state with HHS. They almost take 50% of the budget, and they have a problem. I don't know if you've heard some of the stories up there with them misusing the money. They lost money. They couldn't find it. Why we still have a waiting list. In fact, the waiting list grew after we gave them a lot more money to take care of the specific problem of cutting the waiting list.
Right.
And it's not being distributed. The governor asked for money to help the police departments if in this heroin epidemic. And there was $3 million that was passed in a dire emergency, and so far, only $1 million has been reached where it was supposed to go.
Right.
Why?
Yeah, that's true. And I think it's about accountability, Carl.
That's right.
I think that people, if they work in the shadows and there really isn't a construct that allows people insight, and you shouldn't be afraid to open your kimono and show people what your checkbook is, right? It's our money. It's our taxpayer money, right? It's our citizens' money. So we have a vested interest, and we should have at least the ability to have an understanding of where the money's going. And anytime somebody comes up and goes, well, and the him and the haw, it kind of just gets my cockles up. I'm like, well, what is it that you can't tell me? And if you can't tell me, why? Right? It should be, there's no secrets here. This is our state, and our state should be together, and open. And I think that kind of dialogue is missing. And not just here, everywhere. And people are afraid to do that kind of stuff.
There is no dialogue, really. right now we're waiting for the report from that department, which was due in September, and probably won't come until after the election.
Funny how that happened.
Yeah, we know that they overspent their budget, but we don't know by how much. So
Right.
we can't have a final audit for last year yet,
Yeah.
the fiscal year that ended at the end of June.
Right.
No,
It's crazy, and I think it has to start from the top,
That's
right?
right.
I think the accountability has to start with our governor, and so that's why it's so important in this race, with Chris running, Chris
That's right.
Sununu, to be able to get that corner office and be able to have, and I believe as a businessman, he understands a balance sheet, he understands a profit and loss statement. We understand those people, and myself as a small business owner, that's what makes the wheel turn. You have to understand what's going on in the inner workings, and if you don't have any kind of accountability, then it just falls off the track, and that's
Well,
what I think we've seen.
Another aspect of that goes when you have a law or you have a program that you're trying to implement, you should have the objectives spelled out,
Right.
how you define the objectives, how you measure them, and then monitor it as you go through. And then if it doesn't work out, how you have to change it, how you're recommending to
Right.
change it.
Right.
But you just get the money and that's it. Nobody does anything.
But that's not how we run our household.
No,
Right? I
no.
mean, it amazes
You
me.
don't run your
sometimes-
business
I don't
that
run my
way.
business that way, or I'd be out of business.
That's right.
And I'd be yelled at by my wife if I ran it that way. So, it's a lot. We make things so complicated, and,
That's
I
right.
personally believe it doesn't have to be that. It's what comes in, what goes out, and what's it for. Very simple, but we create these environments, these artificial environments that makes it very difficult for us to have that kind of insight into what's actually going on into a department.
But that's what I think. If you have that attitude, you'll really be a service to the
Well, I hope
state.
so. I hope so.
So you have any other areas?
I
that
do
you
two
think-
more, if you'll allow
Okay.
me. Number one, or the second one, is the opioid issue that we
Yeah.
have. I unfortunately went to a funeral service on Monday, this past Monday, for a young man, a 23-year-old, who passed away from addiction. And a young man that I knew was a little guy in Little League, and tremendous family, tremendous family. And I think what came to roost is that it is an epidemic, and I think it's not just singularly focused. We have to look at the ability for us within the state to have our agencies, whether it's law enforcement agencies, people that do treatment, education. I think we have to be able to coalesce all those people and put together a right way to go about it. We have to be able to lash up with federal agencies, right? So one of the people I've talked to talks about all the drugs that are coming in from south of the border and no longer into the inner cities. Right now they're going into places like Lowell and Lawrence, good cities in and of themselves, but all of a sudden they're staging that and they're reaching out to the suburbs. And that's where you find that a lot of this epidemic that we're seeing is out in the places where traditionally you wouldn't see that. You think about epidemics of opioids or heroin, and we see pictures of tall buildings and people in the streets. That's not the case anymore. It has actually reached out into the suburbs. So I think we as a state need to do a better job of lashing up with federal agencies and sharing information. We need to stop the drugs from coming into the state. We need to stop the drugs from coming into the country. Once we were able to stem that tide, then it's about treating those people. And it is a sickness, right? It isn't something that we can just turn our backs on. I mean, people need help. And sometimes, no matter how much they want to do it on their own, people do need help.
Oh,
And they
yeah.
need to understand that they can reach out for help. And I think the third part about it is educating the younger kids nowadays. And I know it's a discussion and a topic that people don't want to talk about, but I think it's important that they understand how easily with some of these artificial drugs that are out there and how some of the drug dealers are actually making these things so much more powerful that it can't be a one-time death, by the trying it. It's not this, I got hooked on something
Right.
and got something else. So I think those things, I think we have to be able to share information between states and federal agencies. I think we have to be able to provide the treatment. And then thirdly is that we have to provide education so that these young kids coming into
Definitely a broad spectrum.
it has to
of
be,
it.
because you can't, I mean, granted, Hammer's working,
Yeah.
by putting some money back out to the street where the law
Right.
enforcement's out there, but it's got to be a bigger, and I think it's not just New Hampshire, you look at the surrounding states, we have to be able to take a consolidated
Integrated,
coalition
yeah.
attempt to try and stem this tide.
Yeah, I think we can get more of the not-for-profit organizations
Absolutely.
involved. I don't know if you've looked at Harbor Homes.
I'm very familiar with Harbor Homes,
Yeah.
and I think that's an excellent example to be able to help those guys. Because I think, and what I found and being self-reflective over the last couple of days with this young man is that, I think he's as courageous as anybody, and people don't understand when I say that. I say that because, every day he doesn't want to do this.
Right.
He doesn't want to be here, right? So how do we help a person get to that point where they can have the tools and be able to get back on their feet and realize that it is a demon that they fight, and how do we help them get back on their feet? Absolutely.
And make sure they don't have a relapse.
Absolutely. You betcha. You
So,
betcha.
okay.
And the last thing I'd like to talk about is our business environment here in New Hampshire. As a small business guy, and I know we're getting better, the business enterprise tax here in the state is just crushing small business under the weight of where it's at. One of the things that I believe that our biggest export in the state is our students. Right? We need to find a way to lash up with the university system here in the state of New Hampshire and small businesses that has some sort of mentor-protege agreement where I can get some kids, much like Northeastern does down in Massachusetts, where they can take some kids in their sophomore, junior year, bring them into the businesses during a summer, right? Get them some experience, have them realize that, you know what, I don't have to go south of the border to go find a good paying job, to be able to find a job that will allow me to then buy a home, raise a family. And I think that we have to, the more profit a small business can make, and my wife she says, be very careful when you say profit, because a lot of people's idea of profit is that it goes right back into my pocket as a business owner. That's not what I'm talking about. The profit is replowing that money into the people that are your biggest asset, which are your people.
Right.
Be able to grow the company, be able to provide better healthcare benefits, right? Some of
Educational benefits.
Educational benefits, right? Maybe there's a way that you come work for me, I help over the term, help you pay back a student loan. So I believe there's a way that we can build a construct that allows students to realize I don't have to take my talent out of state, that right here in the state of New Hampshire, there's good small businesses. We provide 2/3 of the jobs here in the state. And let's find a way that we can keep our talent, which is our young kids, in our state to grow those things. And not drive behavior like the healthcare costs with Obamacare, that people will keep guys under 30 hours so they don't have to pay them health care.
That's right.
I remember growing up, and it's a little different for me. My father in the military, I never knew about health care. I knew that I'd be taken care of. We got to get to a point where I know that I can hire some people, and the one thing that they don't have to worry about is health care. Worry about the work, worry about your family, right? You take care of those, and I'll take care of you.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and that works out. I worked for a fairly large company before I retired, DuPont.
Yes.
And I've lived in Massachusetts, or I worked in Massachusetts for quite a while. And we had a program like that where during the summer we took interns
absolutely.
and showed them some biological techniques and stuff. And, and then we worked with Middlesex Community College where we made them available as trainees or something like that.
Right.
So that's the kind of works.
It does work.
And you get a better, you get a local personnel and everything. So, it does work.
And there's some programs within my business, primarily is with the Department of Defense. There are these programs called Small Business Innovative Research. My plan is to be able to bring a college student in, have them work on there as a third-year engineering student or third year, and help us work on this plan. Let the government help us, right? Because you get a small stipend that allows that student to get that kind of experience. Maybe it gains traction. Maybe it becomes what we call a program of record or gets absorbed. And now this guy who helped me in his junior or senior year now wants to come back because he's got a vested interest in some of the work that we've done. So that kind of legwork, that kind of relationship, I think is vital.
Yeah.
I think we see it in other states, and I think we can do that kind of stuff here in New Hampshire, not lose our kids to the east or to the south.
And you see the community colleges picking up on some of the technology.
Absolutely.
Especially machining, welding, and things like that.
Right.
That's what you need.
You do.
And from our experience, I'm on the Public Works Department, but we handle the budgets, the capital budgets. And the community colleges over the last several years have done an excellent job in planning their expansion or bringing new technology in so that they can handle it.
Right, absolutely. And then I think they want to do that. I think that the kids today want to find a situation where they can feel vested, that they can feel, we've become such a society of transients, right? I go over a company for 2 years, another company for 2 years, another company for 2 years, and we've established an ability to do that by taking a 401k and rolling it over and doing that stuff. But where's that kind of feel that this is my company.
That's right,
From the
yeah.
top down, and we're all in this together. And as long as we're rowing in the same direction,
Yeah.
there really isn't anything that this kind of entrepreneurialism and ingenuity and stick-to-itiveness that our kids have, and I know they have it, that we could do just bang up job here in our state.
You can see how they handle it with sports. They
Absolutely.
take in the team. Okay.
That's right.
You and I had a little bit back
Yeah.
experience in that. But yeah, it's something that we want to tie it all together. I don't think the colleges have really appreciated as much as the community colleges
Right.
have.
Right.
And that's a shame.
It is, because it's such a wealth of talent.
Right.
And we're not in a position right now. We need to get better, but we're not in a position to draw that kind of thing. So we need to take a longer look, a very strategic look of how we lash up our business enterprise in the state, along with the educational institutions, and how can we lash it, because this is a great state, right? I adopted this state, right? I'm not from New Hampshire originally. When I moved here in 1989, I'd never been in the East Coast.
Oh.
Even though my parents grew up, my dad was from Puerto Rico, my mom from New York City, and they grew up in the city. But being military, we were all over the place, and I fell in love with this place. This is quintessential, the place that you want to raise a family,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
so how do we make this state
agree with you.
that kind of place and that's why we put our roots down here, absolutely,
Uh-huh.
without a doubt. So
Well, I hope we can go make some changes. Back in 2010, when we had the supermajority, but we didn't have a Republican governor,
right,
that's what we need to make our plans go through.
yes,
Because a lot of things were started, and I was surprised when I got back in this last term. They haven't done anything. Not a thing. We wanted to have a one-stop shop where any new business or that wanted to come into the state could go there and find out all the rules and regulations,
Right.
who to sign off on, and handle it at one place instead of running around to several different places. We wanted to get everybody on the digital areas so
Right.
that you could do things by communication over the wire
Sure.
rather than passing papers back and forth. Some of the departments still have papers that they pass back and forth for the applications.
yeah. And I think sometimes, Carl, people are, technology for technology's sake, I understand the fear, but when you can use it to increase productivity,
Yeah.
right, and use it to a benefit, not to become dependent, because I'm still a guy that I believe that at the end of the day, it's just two people talking, right? That's really where the genesis of everything starts. The medium or the mechanism could be great, whether it be a cell phone or an iPad or a tablet, whatever. Let's get to that dialogue and find out a way that we can then make things more productive.
Right.
I'm all for that. Absolutely.
And that's what we have to work together on, and get ourselves organized a little bit better to communicate with our voters.
Yes.
To be able to get their support for these changes that are necessary. To
Absolutely.
get new businesses in here, and to make sure they're able to grow.
And I think it just takes, it's just like that, the saying in Scripture, it's that mustard seed, right? Just plant one.
That's right.
Right? Plant one, and you'll see the return on that one seed. And I think once we find a way to be able to express what business can do here in the state, because businesses are always looking for a place to put down, right? And if we can stem this exodus from our state
That's
south,
right.
then I think, Frank Edelblue, who I thought had some great ideas
definitely.
about business, and how he made his comment, I believe, that we go to Massachusetts to make earn a living, to come back here to pay property taxes. But how do we stem that tide and show that there really is value here in the state to establish a small business?
There's a business caucus up there, which is both Republicans and Democrats.
Oh, there is?
Yeah, under Lori Sanborn.
Yes, okay. She's the one that started that business caucus.
right,
yes, absolutely.
And that's when we had a big subcommittee looking into the rules and regulations and what was discouraging all the businesses
Right.
and everything. And we had a lot of good success in that. It's just that it was never followed through. I mean, the next year, we always had a Democratic governor over the last several years, and that's one of the problems. And, all they like to do is spend money rather than really look to accomplish something.
Right. Yeah.
And-
And I think that, nothing worth anything is ever easy.
No.
And I know it's like ripping off a Band-Aid, and people get very sedentary and very comfortable the way things are. But sometimes you got to just take a broom and shake some stuff up and figure out what's really important. And I think that when you have an ability and a willingness to be able to do that, like what you guys probably did in the business caucus, that's where progress gets made.
Yeah.
You know, a bill or some kind of constraint or a law may have been good 20 years ago, but things have evolved and things have changed. Some things are still good, like being kind to each other. That'll never change. But some things need to get changed, and we need to be able to be willing to be able to look at those things and change them where
Be a
necessary.
little bit more flexible.
Absolutely.
People should be willing to learn a little bit. You know, make some change. Changes are hard to implement,
Right.
but you know, you want to be able to do your work and feel you've accomplished something.
Yes.
And so if we can help you accomplish something, you know, that's what we want to
Right.
do, and everybody benefits.
Right. You know, I'm fortunate enough that I sit on the executive council of the National Small Business Association in Washington, and every once in a while we go down to D.C. and we have our conference. And I remember we go and see our political leaders. So I was very fortunate to go see. I saw Senator Shaheen and I saw Senator Ayotte. And one of the things that we're trying to do is how do we, at a state level, how do we get that leadership both from Washington and then back here in the state to look at how small businesses can really then allow itself to learn from other states, right? Cross-pollinate, figure
That's
out
right.
what's going out there, what works in some areas. You know, there's no sense of reinventing the wheel, but if there's some things we can do, and I think that's something that's important for us to learn from Vermont or from Maine or from Massachusetts. You know, what are some things that are working? Let's find the best of breed, right? It doesn't have to be invented here, right?
That's right.
There's some good ideas I think we should bring those back here as well.
And working on a national scale does
Absolutely.
You do get that
You bet.
ideas.
You bet.
So anyway, we're winding down. Is there anything further? I mean, the budget's another big thing that we're going to
Right.
have. And I don't know if you saw some of the news that's coming out on their draft budget.
I haven't seen no.
They're doing exactly what they did last time.
Right.
They raised the income by $1 billion more. You know, I don't know. Well, they're going to get it by raising taxes and
Right.
raising fees. And it's the same thing. We threw out the governor's budget and started on scratch on ourselves, and we came up with a good one
Right.
where we actually gained money. Of course, we don't know how much we gained yet because they don't give the numbers in. But besides that, let's see what we can do this time. Get it in, get a few more tweaks on some of the business taxes and some of the things like loss carry forward
Sure.
and everything. But we need to get them business oriented.
Yes.
And the people who work there are going to be happier too,
You bet.
you know. But they got to be a little willing to learn, do things maybe a little differently.
I know, and that's always that hurdle that you have to get over. That
Yeah.
people believe that change is bad.
Yeah.
Change isn't always bad.
No.
You know, and once you get used to it, you're like, you know, that wasn't so bad after all.
And, you know, be willing to maybe change something around. You know, maybe if you don't want to use a computer, we call you a job. You don't have to use it. I know I had a
That's right.
sister who just absolutely would not learn how to use a computer.
Just
You know, she just
want-
grew up with a typewriter, and but you know, she wouldn't change.
right.
It's hard to live
It
that
is,
way.
it is.
It is
Especially in
hard to-
today's, because
That's
that's
right.
where all the information, you know, highways at.
Oh, yeah.
You know, that's how you get informed. Yeah, that's true.
Well, I think we ran out of time.
Well, Carl, thank you so much, sir. I appreciate you having me on.
Okay. Well, good luck. I hope if you need anything, any help, we're running out of time for
I
that.
know.
It's only a couple of weeks to go, but we have your information on the tape, and it will show, and hopefully some people will come out and help you out in the last couple of weeks.
I appreciate that, Carl.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.